Billy said, my name is Justin Shelley. Quick back, actually, before I introduce myself, do you guys mind just tell me who I'm talking to? What kind of business you're with, questions that you came here with, because I could sit here and give this whole presentation and miss the mark if I don't know who I'm talking to. So coaching, I assume it's you, one-man organization?
One-man gang.
Okay. What do we have? Okay. I heard retired. Is that true?
Yes.
I'm so jealous.
I worked at the Delta Daily Free Press.
Okay.
Advertising, and when they can't make things like this,
You come and
step up and
report on it?
Yep.
Am I going to be on the front page of the newspaper?
No.
Dang it. Okay. All right. And then where are you ladies from?
I'm Jasmine. This is my mom, Vanessa, and we own the company with the community.
Okay.
Our general question was like making it more out of Nevada, so we wanted to like keep it secure and keep it in one place. You don't have to deal with like cyber stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. And is it just you two, or do you have other people working for you? Just two of you. Okay. All right. So like I said, my name's Justin Shelley. I started the company that I used to, Master Computing, back in 1997. So I've been in this game for a while. I got into technology because my dad brought home a computer when I was 12. It was an Apple IIe, if you remember those ancient things. I loved reaching inside and pulling out modems and sound cards and, you know, wiring the mouse up through the back. The mouse was like a great big brick. Actually, my original logo had that brick mouse on there because that was the thing at the time. So it dates me. I got rid of all that. But anyways, I got into computers because I loved that kind of thing. I liked programming. I liked building things. I liked fixing things. My dad was a copy repair man from Xerox, and so I kind of grew up around tinkering and stuff like that. But then one day, almost 10 years ago, I had a client get breached. They got hit with ransomware, and it changed my whole world. So that's kind of why now I do presentations on cybersecurity, because I watched, and we'll talk more about this, but I watched the company almost die, basically. It crippled them. They were down for about 3 weeks. It almost caused the husband-wife team to divorce. They fired me, even though I feel like I did a really good job for them, but they still blame me for the Russian attack. It was the Russians that got them. So anyways, that day I just thought, okay, this is never going to happen again. On my watch, I'm not going to have a client get breached. And so I kind of switched my focus from my real passion, which was tinkering and fixing, to protecting, which is fine because my other passion really is business in general. Even from the time I was a little kid, I was kind of experimenting with businesses. I ran a little newspaper at Grammar Number 2. I found a copy of that the other day, and I was just, you know, copy and paste that we talk about now on computers. I was cutting, copying, and pasting, and selling these newspapers, I think, for like 5 cents or something like that. So, yeah, I used to be in the newspaper business. Anyway, so I've always had a passion for business. I watched my parents. They owned the Stampede Motel here in town for a while. And I don't know all the details. I was a kid. I was like 12 at the time. But my dad quit his job, took his retirement out, and poured it into that business. Whatever happened, he felt he was taken advantage of in some way, but lost everything. And so I watched my parents try to do the entrepreneurial thing and lose everything, and it was devastating. So that is kind of a secondary passion of mine, is making sure that businesses are healthy, they're protected, and profitable. I do like money. I will never pick on somebody for wanting to be profitable. If we can't, I mean, that's the oxygen of business, right? If we can't make money, we're going to die. So that's me. That's my background. I'm going to skip this 7-minute video, but it's a fun video to watch. Maybe I'll play it when we're done here. It just talks about some of the things that can happen if we aren't careful. The way that we really can get, our identity stolen. That's kind of what that video is about that I just skipped. But anyways, let's jump in. My company, we do all the fun tinkering repair stuff. We do the cybersecurity stuff. And when people call us, the reason they're coming to us is usually because they either don't have an IT company at all, or whoever they're calling doesn't really respond quickly. And so my number one claim to fame is that we have a 10-minute or less response time on average. I'm not saying there aren't times where, there's a perfect storm and we can't respond in that window. But we try to enter our phones live. We try to respond to those tickets when they come in just immediately in real time. So number 2, that's what we're talking about today. Keeping cyber criminals out of your bank account. Now, a lot of times I'll go to organizations and I'll be talking to them about this one-on-one. They won't ever admit it in public. But one-on-one, I'll say, hey, we've got to do this, this, and this to keep the bad guys out of your network. And that's where I've changed my dialogue. And they'll say, well, I don't have anything for them to steal. Or I'm too small, or I'm too whatever. And I'm going to get into that. That's like my number one obstacle, is that mindset. But the reality is they aren't after your computers. They don't care. They're not after your data. They don't care about your data. What they're after is your bank account. And we all have one of those. And if we're not careful, they will get to it. And we're going to talk about banks a little bit later too and how much they help. And then finally, we're the only IT company that guarantees a positive return on investment to your technology budget. So that does more apply to larger organizations, 10, 20, 30 employees. We have a program where we actually look at metrics and we improve on those over time. So here's an overview of what we're going to talk about. The mindset problem that I always deal with, nothing bad ever happens to me. We'll talk about the 5 top cybersecurity risks. I'm going to keep repeating that middle thing. That it's tragic to me that most of the breaches that we hear about, and we're talking, the ones that so the problem I have in talking about cybersecurity is that it's all hush hush. Nobody wants to admit what happened. They don't want to admit publicly what damage was done or anything else. So we dig and we find out everything we can. But it's a lot. It's devastating emotionally. It's devastating financially. And the tragedy in it is that almost always these are preventable. And I'm not talking about like throwing a ton of money at it. I'm just saying doing the basic things, being aware. You guys here are already less likely to get hit because you're paying attention, right? The ones that didn't make it today, we're probably going to be having a different conversation someday. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. I was giving the overview, lost track. I got too passionate about that one. We'll talk about the 4-step formula, what we have to protect, how to do it, and then we'll wrap up with some things I'm going to give away for free. All right, again, this is the tragedy that I'm trying to prevent right here. So the mindset problem, nothing bad ever happens to me. This is easily the hardest part of my job. And people always have their reasons for it. Top reasons that I get is move to the cloud. That's one of my favorites. I moved to the cloud, therefore I'm protected. What you just did there is made things more spread out, harder to know where it lives, and you think they're not targets, they're getting breached too, and then now you don't have any control. You probably don't have backups of your cloud applications, so that's a bigger problem, not a better problem. We're too small, whatever. We get a lot of those. So this mindset is the problem. I'm going to talk a little bit about some real-world examples of breaches. This is dated. Was anybody other than Billy here the last time I did this presentation in November? Okay, good, because I promised to make some updates to this back then, and I didn't. I still have old information here. I'm gonna make a little bit of an excuse later, or at least give you a way to get more current information. But this is a great example. I do like having it in here. It's just dated. But back in 2019, there was a telemarketing firm who was breached with a ransomware attack. They were not able to recover from that, and this was right around the holiday times. They closed down, went out of business, and 300 people got walking papers right before the holidays. So this is the kind of thing that I'm trying to prevent. But my real world examples that aren't personal, that come from the news, will be like this. They're 300 employees, they're 1,000 employees, they're great big corporations. But I do try to also bring insights from what I experienced personally. I got ahead of myself there because this is local, again, out of date. I did this presentation in Dallas as well. There was the city of Fort Worth was hacked. I forget the date on this one. It was 2020 or 2021, somewhere in that time frame, just post-COVID. This is not personal information or experience. I got it from the newspaper, the articles that I read there. I always have to put that disclaimer. But they lost $500,000. Some version of what happened is they had 2 IT managers. They identified the problem and they took it to their superiors and said, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. And the superiors, I think it was a CFO, and I don't remember who the other one was, said, shh, don't tell anybody, because if we go into the board, wherever they have to get their funding approved for, they have to then admit that we are 90% out of compliance. And I don't mean like really intricate compliance. I'm just talking about the basic industry standards, which is what I'll go into later on how we do this, the toolkit and all that. But it's the stuff that we all can do. It's not a huge expense, but because they were out of compliance, they didn't want to admit it. They didn't do anything about it. They lost $500,000. Those 2 turned into whistleblowers, so then they got fired. They got mad. They sued the city for $1 million. I quit watching it. It was like a soap opera. I'm not interested in those. So I don't know how it turned out, but I do know that one of the problems we have is a cultural problem. Instead of, if you look at any other crime, say somebody breaks into my house. They break in, they steal my TV, they steal my jewelry, they steal my money. I might make the news, but nobody's going to be picking on me because I didn't have the right lock in place, because I didn't have the right security cameras in place. Nobody's going to talk about that. They're going to say, hey, how do we get the bad guy? Let's help Justin. People will rally around me. But in this, we don't do that. We beat on the people that get attacked. And we tell them, hey, you didn't have the right protections in place. And in some cases, they get sued. They get government penalties. They get audited. I mean, it's a nightmare. And so because of that, we have this kind of a scenario where somebody says, hey, we have a problem. Let's fix it. and they don't. Instead, they silence them. So a little closer to home, MGM Grand, you guys familiar with that? They got breached a 4 months ago now. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't there, but I was scheduled to be there like, I think just a week or two after it happened. I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to see any of the actual damage done. But do you remember what happened? Like the impact it had on them?
I just know personally.
Were you there?
No,
Oh.
all my stuff, like, you know, if I had an Indian account,
Okay.
and it just turned into a mess, and I had to call and get everything redone, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No explanation as far as what happened, but.
I'll tell you what happened. The damage done, at least in the moment, guests couldn't check into their rooms. I think the elevators, the escalators quit working. The slot machines weren't working. So not only do we have a drastic financial loss, but look at perception. Right? We're still talking about them. What we talked about forever. Still talking about Home Depot that got breached. Still talking about Chase Bank. We're still talking like these breaches last. And so, if nothing else, we really, really want to protect our reputation, our image for our businesses. Anyways, the financial damage done was somewhere between 100 and 500 million. Now, it depends. That range is because it depends on how you count it. Are we talking about direct financial loss? You know, they didn't pay. In this case, there were 2 breaches at the time. MGM did not pay the ransom. There was another casino down there that got a similar breach. But there's still direct costs in the labor, the replacing of software, equipment, whatever. That's a nightmarish process to recover from something like that. But then you also have reputation. You have lost. People are going to. How far into the future does this impact them? So I don't know how that number was calculated, but we're approaching $500 million. This is a lot of money. How it happened? It's social engineering. Does anybody know what social engineering is? Ever heard the term? No? You have? Okay. I'm not going to answer that. The camera's running. Okay. So social engineering is where you use different manipulative tactics to get somebody to do what you want them to do. Okay. It doesn't really even have to be negative. Taxes, great example of social engineering. Tax breaks. Why do you think the government gives tax breaks to agriculture? They want us to produce food, right? That's social engineering. So in this case, what they did is there was a higher up of some sort. The bad guys did what's called a SIM swap. They got the chip that goes in his phone or the number from it, and they were able to replicate his phone. By the way, I have to put the disclaimer always, I don't have personal information here, but this is what I heard from companies, people I do know within companies that do this kind of thing. So, but anyways, they made a call into the help desk. It was one call to the help desk and said, hey, I need you to change my password. I locked myself out. And that account that the help desk, this poor guy, just trying to do his job, reset the password, and that let them in, and then the rest is history. So I already went over reputation, but that was probably at least as big of a problem as the financial loss. Now, personal examples. These I know of directly. So I had an acquaintance, friend type acquaintance, who was the CFO of $5 million company, and her boss, the CEO, frequently traveled and made large purchases. This was a common thing that happened. And a lot of times with these breaches, the bad guys will watch your behaviors and they know what you're doing, and then they replicate that. And that's what happened. In this case, they didn't actually breach anything. They faked an email. It's called spoofing, but it's almost more common now that they'll actually take over your email account and send emails directly as you. In this case, it was a spoofed email coming from somebody else pretending to be this guy. And just said, hey, I'm out of town, which he was, because they knew that. I'm making a purchase. It's $50,000. Attaches the wiring instructions. Send it. I need it now. And there's always urgency to this stuff. They play on our emotions. And so, of course, she sent the money. There was no reason not to. That money's gone. You can't get that money back. So that was a bad day. This one was actually an employee of one of my clients. It had nothing to do with the business that she worked for. She was actually doing remodeling work on her home. And I think it was a roofing contractor, was breached. And somebody actually got into their email account. And what they do when they get in is they create rules so that as the emails come in from the person they're targeting, they push them off into a folder so that the owner of the account never sees it. And that's what happened here. So the contractor sent an email to the client saying, hey, I need, here's the invoice, $15,000. And the client came back and said, okay, I'll send you, or I've got a check waiting, it's sitting on my desk, whatever it was. Bad guy got that. And then the bad guy sent out a different email a day or two later and saying, hey, that check that you said you had ready for me, would you mind just wiring that money so I don't have to come pick it up? No problem, right? And that's the call that I got. Like I said, this was an actual client, but it wasn't anything that I was directly responsible for. I don't know if that's good or bad, because I wish I could have helped. But in this case, there was nothing I could have done. But it was, hey, Justin, here's what happened. Can you help? Like, well, call your bank immediately. And this was COVID as well. The bank said, we're backed up about 45 days on cases on fraud cases like that. So it'll be 45 days before we can even investigate it. Does anybody know what the turnaround time is on a wire transfer with a bank? Like if you want to pull it back, any guesses? Do you have 45 days? No. 12 to 24 hours, sometimes 2 days. So when they're telling her 45 days before they can even look into it, it's game over. We actually did, the contractor then hired us. We were kind of like in the middle, almost dispute resolution. It was a bad place for me to be. But they did hire us to protect them, which we did. We got in, saw what happened, fixed it. A few months later, he canceled the service because it was too expensive. I think I was charging him $100 a month. So, all right, buddy. Anyways, this one is a little more, it wasn't really fraud. I had some vendors, I'll leave their names out of it, charge me money that they should not have charged me. And so it's more on the subject of just being careful, watching your accounts, knowing where your money's going. I didn't catch it in time. And so same thing, it was gone, $3,000. I spent over the course of 2 weeks, I probably put about 20 hours on the phone with these vendors, and it never went anywhere. So if you guys don't have alerts set up on your bank accounts, do that. Most of the apps, they'll just tell you about, you can set the threshold and stuff, the types of transactions that are going on. You can set it to like anything over $100, over $500 or whatever, send me an alert to my phone. You can do types of transactions. So ACH, and banks are getting way better at this as well. Like I can't even send an ACH without doing, another version of authentication. I used to tell people to do that, and now the banks are kind of enforcing it. One thing I will say quickly here is when you're transferring money, or if a vendor asks you for money one way, confirm it through a different channel. So if they email you an invoice and say, here's my routing instruction, my routing number, bank account, wire it, yeah, call them on a number you have. Don't Google it. Don't call the number off their email I just sent you. Call them and ask and confirm it. So, all right, here's what I said. I know. I said I was going to update this. Luckily, nobody's here except for Billy to beat me up over it. But I do have, and I mentioned last time we were getting ready to do a podcast on the MGM Grand, a podcast episode, which we did. So that one's there. This is really where I keep my up-to-date breach analyses going on. So you can go to, this is Spotify, but you can just go, I think if you type in unhacked and then my old company name, Master Computing, it should pull it up. But I keep, every week I get together with me and two buddies that also own IT companies, and we just dig into these breaches and try to figure out what happened, what we can do to prevent it next time. We're always trying to make sure that we are on our A game. What new, because the thing is, I can tell you today what to do to protect your network, your business, your bank, whatever. Tomorrow there's a different problem out there. So we're constantly updating our standards. This is just one of the ways I keep myself current and sharp. Okay, so we've been talking about nothing bad ever happens to me, this mentality. Along this lines, we talk about statistics a lot in this world. I used to be a gambler. I'm a guy that, like, nothing bad ever happens to me. The people I'm complaining about, maybe it's just young. I don't know. Maybe it's age. Maybe it's experience. Maybe life just beats you up enough that finally you realize bad stuff does happen, and it can happen to me. And I went from it probably won't to it probably will, because I've had enough bad things happen to me in a short period of time. I now play the odds the opposite of how I used to. But one of the statistics I throw out a lot is that 1 in 5 small businesses will get breached. Now, it's a very vague statement, because what do we call a breach? What type of businesses are we talking about? Over what time period? I don't have all that information, but I can just tell you that right now, I could go to any of you, if you had a router for your business, I can go in there right now and show you attacks that are going on as we speak at any given time. 100%, it'll be happening. So how often they get through, it depends on a lot of things. But are you under attack? Yes, right now you're under attack. So 1 in 5 is the number that I always use that'll get hacked. You can argue that those are odds in your favor. 80% of the time you're going to win. But the problem is that the stakes are high, right? Better odds, you're less likely to get hit out of 1 in 6, right? How many of us play this game? The stakes are a little too high, right? So I don't love this, but I do want to make the point that the stuff we're talking about is a lot of times game ending. It can kill your business. That leads to a lot of other problems, emotional problems and personal financial problems. I mean, this is just, it's not something we want to play around with. The 1 in 5 that get hit, 60% of those, again, statistics are what they are. You can go find statistics that prove I'm wrong. But I have seen it personally happen where they don't come back. It could be so devastating. Like the MGM, great, they have the resources. They're going to be okay, probably. But some of us don't have those kinds of resources. And some of us, if we lose $15,000 or $50,000, it might be the end of the game, right? The the cost in dollars of a breach just keeps going up and up and up. The criminals are demanding more money. The damage they're doing is more severe. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. So, continuing with the mindset, who's the target? Because again, I get this a lot. I'm too small. I went to the cloud. I did this. I did that. So they're not after me. But this is who they are targeting and why. Large organizations, bad guys are targeting them because it's worth the effort. MGM, well, they didn't pay out. So I like that example because bad guys didn't get any money. I don't like it though because the business was still hurt badly. But they do go after bigger organizations because they have money. Hospitals are a huge target. Schools are a big target. Anyway, like governments are actually a really big target. One of the problems with this though is we see these big organizations getting hit and we think, what can we, the small guy, do? If they're not even able to prevent an attack, how can we prevent an attack? And I'll just point back to the city of Fort Worth, 90% out of compliance. Big organization, a lot of resources, does not mean you're doing what you're supposed to do. Anyways, they are a target. If somebody wants to get in bad enough, they will, and that's how the MGM gets hit. Small organizations are a target a lot of times because they're in denial for reasons I've already said, and because they do have limited resources. So you have to be very careful where you spend your money. We don't all have money to just throw at the greatest technology or cybersecurity protection that's out there. I've got some software that I love to put out there, but it's expensive and it causes a lot of problems. And so not very many people go for it, but it would prevent even more problems. But we have to look at not just financial resources, but the time resource. Biggest resource, and you guys all get it today if you want it, that I give away and encourage people to use is cybersecurity awareness training. This counts, by the way. This is great. This should be at a minimum once a year that you do something like this. But we also need constant awareness training throughout. Like every week, we should have some sort of reminder. Anyways, individuals are also a target. You don't have to be in business because, again, what are they after? It's not our computers. It's not our data. They don't care. They want our money. All right, so we've gone over mindset. How are we doing on time? I'll try to get you out here by 1. Top 5 cybersecurity risks. I had to update this one. This I did update since last time because it was 4. And I threw a new one in there because, like I said, this is always changing. And actually, I might even have to take some of the older ones out. But does anybody have a guess on what the number 1 risk is in the world of cybersecurity? You can answer in case you remember from last time. Okay, good. Anybody know? Password is a huge one. It's not the number 1, but it is embarrassing how many people still use those easy passwords. Okay, anybody else? Want to guess? It's us. It's me. I'm the problem, guys. It's complacency. We're so busy we don't have time to. For example, this was probably more than 10 years ago. I was doing a lot of work on LinkedIn, and I got an email from LinkedIn that said, hey, I don't remember what it was. Somebody connected or accepted or wanted to schedule. I don't know. It was good news, right? So I get this email. I'm like, yes, and I clicked on it, and the browser pops up, and everything just stopped. I was like, damn it. They got me, and I know better, right? Because I'm the guy teaching this stuff. But they got me. So we are the problem. This book, Future Crimes, is phenomenal. If you want to not sleep anymore, if you just want to scare yourself silly, I've got copies of these. I'll give you. Come by my office. I'll give you a copy. But the line my favorite line in the whole book, and it's like 500 pages. If you think technology can solve your security problems, you don't understand the problems, and you don't understand the technology. Cybersecurity is a people problem, not just a technical one. So we have to hit it from both angles. So security problem number 1 is definitely people. How they do it, I've kind of touched on this. They play on our emotions. The 2 primary things that this is social engineering, right? This is what they do, is they play on our desire to help and our desire to avoid conflict. We all have that built into us. Take this poor help desk guy. He's got a higher up at the MGM calling in saying, hey, I need this right now. So there's urgency. He wants to avoid that conflict because this guy makes more money than he does. He's not going to challenge him. He wants to help because we're human, and it's in the story. So biggest problem, number 2, bank fraud. So this, I've already touched on it. I'll go quickly. Do you guys know what FDIC is? Anybody? Okay, you're nodding your head. I'm going to pick on you. What does it mean? What does it do?
I believe it's the Federal Deposit Insurance.
Who does it protect?
And it protects people that save their money in banks.
Okay.
Up to whatever the number is, $250,000, something like that.
So if I get hit with a ransomware attack or whatever, like let's say somebody gets into my bank and they steal $50,000, can I rely on them? FDIC. That's what they're for, right?
I thought it was for if the bank failed.
It is. Okay, so you get a gold star. Not everybody knows that, and they think FDIC is out there to protect them, but it absolutely does not. And I've worked with banks. I've actually done co-presentation with banks like this. And one of the things I will tell you about banks is they're not going to help you. But really they can't. I've watched behind the scenes. They want to, but there's just stuff they can't do. When money's gone, it's gone. They can't pull it back. Credit cards are your friend. And what I do, there was actually an interesting comment on Facebook to this event. Somebody asked about like the aging, the elderly, and they're easy targets, especially if you get any level of dementia or whatever in there. And they're like, I wish there was a program for them. Like, yeah, me too. But what do? You can't teach them, right? And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying you can't. I've got a father who just had a stroke. I can't help him when somebody calls in and says, hey, hey, Dad, I just got kidnapped and I'm in Russia and they're telling me I need money. Will you send me money fast, Dad, please? Right? And the emotions come out. Yeah, the money's gone. So what I recommend, and I put that on Facebook too, is like give Dad a credit card that has a $500 limit. And I like to use virtual credit cards. I'm not advertising for Capital One. It's just who I use. They allow you to create virtual account numbers for every vendor. And so all of my monthly recurring costs, I've got a different card for them. So now if one of them, that number goes off, number one, I know who did it. I know who's, yeah. And then also it's really easy to shut that down without affecting all the other ones. So anyways, a little off track there. Top 5 security risks. Number 3, mobile and cloud. I've already been over it, so I'm gonna kind of skip it. But the more we go mobile, the more we put our data out for somebody else to take care of, the harder it is for us to protect, not the easiest. Ransomware we've talked about, but this is the 4th biggest problem. It was my first introduction into this world. There's a lot of different types of extortion. Ransomware is just really one version of extortion, but that's what most of these are about. They get something that you want, and then they promise that they will give it back to you if you pay the money, right? So either they encrypt your files, or they can actually, if that doesn't work, they'll take your data and then they threaten to make it public or try to embarrass you or go after your clients or whatever, but they'll find some way to try to extort you. It used to be that backups were the answer to that, but there's so many ways that the bad guys either go after backups, they disable them, they delete them, or they just let your backups run long enough that all of your infected software, because they infected it, is now being backed up, and when you try to restore, you just restore their problem. That's what happened to me on that first breach I talked about. Let's see. This was the new one that I added. Impersonation. This one's scary. I'll be honest. That AI/deepfake. Well, let me go in order. BEC. Does anybody know what that is? Business email compromise. It's what I've been talking about when that poor young lady who wanted her contractor to have $15,000. That was a business email compromise. The $50,000. My boss is out of town. I need money, or I am the boss, right? Those are all BEC. SIM swap is what I talked about with MGM Grant. These are kind of new-ish. BEC is new in relation to ransomware. It's not really new. It's been around for a long time, but it is kind of the up-and-coming problem that we're dealing with. AI, the deep fake stuff. You guys know what that is? Anybody? Yeah? Yeah, so they take that video and they say, hey, make Justin talk like, say whatever. And they take all the things that I've said and they find the right sounds and then they make me say something else I didn't say. Yeah. You can't, right? Yeah. It is. You can't. It's scary, but also liberating. I have a lot of personal stories I'm not going to share here, but when you've been lied to and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I guess deceived on a really deep personal scale, it's actually kind of fun to not trust, to learn you don't have to trust everything. Like I said, I'm not going to get personal, but I do have some personal stories there. Okay, now let's move on to this one that I keep saying. They could have been prevented. You can't get unhacked. That's the title of my podcast, Unhacked. It's an intentional misnomer. What we do is we break it down and we try to tell you how to never have this happen to you, because getting unhacked is impossible. But the good news there is we prevent this stuff not with a lot of technology or a lot of software or a lot of money. We prevent it with the basics. Call them industry standards. Some of them are regulatory, HIPAA laws, PCI compliant. Like there's a lot of those, but all of them overlap and they really say almost the same thing. There is a cost. If you do it right, it's not free. I'm going to give you free stuff, but if you really do it right, you can't do it right for free. This is not a do-it-yourself kind of thing. I do it all day, every day, and it scares me. So don't try to do this yourself. But it is why I've kind of really made an emphasis on delivering a return on your investment for the other part of technology. Cybersecurity is kind of like insurance. It's a sunk cost. I don't know what to do about it. It just is what it is. But we try to take technology then and consult with people on how to improve efficiencies and track them and measure them and get people's businesses to the next level so that in itself pays for the cybersecurity measures. We're actually pretty effective at that. last thing, we just worked too hard to get where we're at to have somebody come in and steal this. That's why I use the example of my parents. You know, I watched them just literally their whole life savings, and then it was just gone in a matter of months, I think, if I remember right. All right, I've said enough. I won't read that again. I won't read that. 4-step formula. Okay, here it is. This is how we fix it, guys. And I could go through it really quick. You protect your technology, you protect your data, you protect your people, and then cover your ass. Sorry, I swear a lot. It's basically procedures, policies, documentation, training, that kind of thing. So we'll dig in a little bit, but I don't want to get in the weeds here because this stuff is unique to each organization. But what we have to do is we have to protect our endpoints. We have to have two-factor authentication. Anybody not know what that is? This is where you try to log into your bank and says, hey, we don't recognize this computer. We're going to send you a text message. By the way, text message, two-factor authentication is the worst. Use the apps like Google Authenticator. Microsoft has one, but the text messaging can actually be impersonated. Security patches, Microsoft, your phones, they all come with constant security updates. Use those when your computer says, hey, can we restart? Please say yes. If you can't say yes right now, then put on your calendar and do it before you go home that day. Let your computer restart. It's actually one of the biggest challenges we have is getting people to restart their computers so that these patches can apply. We see a lot of unpatched computers because of that. Password management. Does anybody use a password management tool in here? Show of hands. Please do. Please do. Now, there's an argument against them in that if they get in there, they've got everything. Okay, that's true. The bigger problem, though, is if you don't have one, you can't possibly maintain a list in your brain of complex passwords that are unique for everything you do. It can't be done. And so then what you do is you either write it on a spreadsheet or a piece of paper, you tape the bottom of your computer, or you use the same one everywhere. Please don't do that. Get a password manager. If you want help, call me up. I will walk you through it. I don't charge, it's not anything I'm selling. Call me up, I'll walk you through how to do it. I personally use LastPass. They were recently breached. Go Google that. That's fun. But like I said, it does come with risks, but still not using it is a bigger risk. Yeah, it's my theory. I can't prove it, but and it's honestly, it's why my problem number one, why it's so hard for me to sell cybersecurity services to somebody who's never been breached. Fire alarms, fire prevention, like that all gets sold after the fire, unfortunately. Let's see. Oh, last one, regular security assessments. I live in this world. I eat, breathe, sleep security, and I hire another firm to look over my shoulder to make sure I'm doing it right, to see what I've missed. So no matter how safe and secure an organization thinks they are, in fact, the more secure they think they are, the more I recommend another set of eyes on that. So that's protecting your technology. Now we'll move on to data. I said I was going to go quick, and I'm not. The real formula here is you just have to look at what programs you're using, where they store the data, what's stored on mobile devices. Like this laptop, I don't keep any data on there. It's all web-based. It's now, of course, a lot of that syncs to the hard drive, so it's still kind of a risk. But you have to know that. Like, where does all of your data live? And then you have to have a plan in place to protect it. Shadow IT is, it really applies to larger organizations. You get employees who are trying to do their job. They don't have the resources they need, or they find some new cool gadget that's going to make their life easier. They download it onto their computer, and then they start putting company data there, or they, whatever. Or, go to this browser and just put the logo in, and it'll update it for you, right? Well, logos are intellectual property. That's not a great example, but it still is IP. And then you put it up to some website that some Yahoo runs. Now they've got it. Again, logo isn't a big deal, but what other things are we doing that with? Chat GPT, right? Let's take this document, let's put it up there and let it spit out something that's way better, more prettier. God, I don't know if you guys have played with that, but it's terrible. I ran one marketing campaign with that, and they came back with, oh, that's Chat GPT, isn't it? Yeah, but my marketing person told me to do it. Anyways, every time you upload that to be Wordsmith or whatever, they now own your property. So be careful where you upload, where you store any kind of information that you want to keep safe. Right, protect your people. This is mostly about training, awareness training, like we're doing here. The thing that I will always teach an organization is that start at the top. And guess how many of them do this? And by the way, what I mean is CEO, sit down and do the training and talk about it. Tell the people that you're doing it. When you just say, hey, go do it, and they know you're not doing it, that again leads to a culture problem. I have almost a 0% success rate with that piece of advice. But it is the key. So the thing about where I'm saying my limitation in this industry is that I don't have inside information. I get together with my peers and we talk about it and we strategize and we plan and we learn, but so do the bad guys. They're all sharing when they, for example, when a ransomware attack is done, any of you guys could do it. Anybody in this room could do it if you have access to the dark web, which Google that if you don't know how to do it, right? Go in, you figure it out, and you rent the software, and you download the instruction book, and if you can't figure that out, you call support, and they walk you through it. Who do you want to target? How do you want to do it? What do you want the outcome to be? Anybody can do this. It is terrifying. So the odds are not in our favor here. So when we're telling people, sit down and shut up, instead of bringing to me a problem that you saw, a security concern, we're doing the exact opposite of what the bad guys are doing. They're all collaborating. And we're sitting here embarrassed, we're shaming each other, we're like auditing and finding people for it. I mean, I get it, because the problem is, the reason this happens though, is because we can't go after the bad guys because they're all hidden in other countries and protected. One of the breaches I just went over might have been HP. HP was breached recently. I think that was don't know that it was them, but I think it was. Another disclaimer, a Russian state-sponsored attack. So the Russian government sponsored this. It didn't just hide the criminals, but they actually sponsored it in some way. Fun fact about that, where we constantly hide, minimize what happened. My favorite line in the report from that breach was, only a few accounts were breached, including the cybersecurity team. Their internal cybersecurity team was breached, and then the headline was, it was just they only got a few accounts. It wasn't a big deal. Like, they got your main accounts. They got the fish they were after. Anyway, so tangent there. But we have to create the right culture. We have to all be working on this together, or like the odds are already bad. we can make them worse this way. To do that, I always prefer the carrot, but when that doesn't work, you do have to come back with some consequences. If somebody on my team isn't going to take security seriously, I have to fire them. Like, I don't even get to give them another chance. So, you know, that's my industry. It's the world I live in. Not every industry has to be that vigilant, but you know, we have to take it serious. Start with rewards. I love to tell organizations to, like, if you're having a weekly meeting or whatever, get a stack of gift cards, $5, $10 gift cards, whatever. You know, who knows something, who saw something that we need to be aware of, and hand those out, whatever. But find a way to reward good behavior so that we're all working and fighting this problem together, instead of, you know, hey, Justin sold me this security training, you got to watch it or you're fired. You know, great. Now I've got one more thing to do. You know, it's just culture. We've got to work on culture. People are the #1 threat, and this is, in my opinion, how we fix it. Finally, cover your ass. In the event of audits, specifically, documentation is key. So I'll talk about HIPAA, because we do a lot in healthcare. If a HIPAA auditor comes in, the first thing they're going to say is, show me your policies and procedures. And when you pull out a great big binder, they're like, okay, they're serious. If you go, I've got it somewhere, well, they're smelling blood. Now they're gonna just keep digging and digging. So get your policies and procedures in place. Set the expectations for your employees. I know not a lot of people in here have employees, so I'm kind of talking to the wrong audience, but and then we just have to continue to reassess and retrain. This is even people that have the policies and procedures in place, which are few, almost none of them revisit them. They just kind of, you get it done, you check it off, and then it's gone. Okay, any questions? I've been going fast. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. Any questions?
I work for the government, so a lot of that is contingent on our job. We have to attend certain
Yeah.
trainings, especially federally, or we don't have a job.
Right.
We've got to see them. So
It's good.
it's good to follow up.
Now go to one of your superiors and make a suggestion.
But they're constantly telling through, hey, this is a
The simulated phishing attacks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Please don't click on it. And I'm like, who's stupid enough to click on that? It's obvious. There's that one person.
You know, but more importantly, the reason I love those isn't to actually try to trick people, but just to get you looking. So it doesn't matter. Good. Give them the start, right? You got it. Good job. 100%. You've never been fooled. But what you've done is it's that culture thing. You're getting people thinking about it, talking about it. Look how stupid this one was. They aren't going to get me, right? It almost becomes like one of the software, the applications we use for that. You can put scoreboards up, so you can see who has the highest security risk score. You know, and so you get people competing and make it a little bit playful.
There was one that came directly from our director. And
Yeah.
It looked legit.
Yeah.
And so I screenshotted it. I didn't click on it. I screenshot into the IT and went, you know, and you're like, oh my god. So.
Was it a simulation like that, a training thing? It wasn't an.
No, it was legit. Like,
Okay.
Really,
It was a real attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Any other questions before I wrap up here?
Justin,
Yes.
what does programs like Norton protect you from, or do they?
I don't like Norton. I'll tell you that. Norton's better than it was. For a while, they were completely obsolete. They're doing better. They were memory hogs. They just would bog your computer down. Sorry, you hit a specific name. The antivirus programs, if we just talk generally speaking, which is probably what you're asking, what they do is when you click that link, hopefully they catch it. When you don't download a virus off the internet or a program that's infected, hopefully it catches it. That's what they're designed to do. It's evolved in the last few years. The way they used to work is it was basically a spreadsheet. And I won't just pick on Norton, but most of the antivirus programs just had a list of all the known viruses. So when you downloaded something, it's like, hold on, let me see if you're on the list. You're not a known virus. Come on through. Really easy to get past those. But also they weren't as big of a threat back then. I could clean up a virus in a few minutes. It wasn't a big deal. Bigger problems now. But the new ones have machine learning, artificial intelligence, so they look more at behaviors and patterns, and they look and say, hey, you downloaded this thing, but it's not doing anything malicious. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm just going to watch it. Some of them will do what they call ring fencing. They let it run, but they lock it down. They don't let it do certain things without raising alerts. And then when it does see something that it doesn't like, it'll kick that back to it's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center, where you take the artificial intelligence, raises the flag, and now a human looks at it and says, is this a real problem or not? And then you move into what's called remediation. So it's a long answer, but that's kind of what they do.
Also, what about when your computer says, do you want to save this password? I generally don't.
Get a password manager. So browsers are getting better. I assume you're talking about on a website. Okay.
Yeah, like credit cards.
Mm-hmm. The way they used to work is it was a little file stored on your computer that just had plain text. I mean, it looked just like this to the computer and to anybody else that got on your computer. Even though you don't see it, even though the browser cleverly puts asterisks over it, the file it's pulling from is still just a plain text file. Browsers are better than they used to be. I still don't recommend them. I prefer somebody like LastPass, who that's all they do is do password protection. Browsers, it's an afterthought at best. So the concept is right, but the tool is wrong, in my opinion. Anybody else?
Which antivirus do you prefer?
I mean, there are several good ones. The one I personally use is called SentinelOne. It's not something you can buy off the shelf. In fact, it's actually hard for me to get. We have to go through channels because it's a great big enterprise. They only sell directly to like accounts with 10,000 endpoints or more. But I buy through like third parties that kind of run it and manage it and have the SOC, the security team behind it.
So the average Joe, what
Hire me.
don't.
Yeah, I don't. I do have some pretty good low cost programs for the average Joe, but I don't have a recommendation. This is why I say this is not a do-it-yourself thing. You can't just get something off the shelf and expect it to do what we need to do to fight crime rings in Russia, right? It's just not. That's not the game we're playing anymore. So I know. That piece that you're asking about isn't something I can give away because it is expensive, but let's talk about what I can give away. This is all free. The cybersecurity assessment. So what this is, it is a link that I send you that simulates a malicious link, and it goes out and it looks for everything bad that a criminal could find if they were to send you a link and you clicked on it, and then it runs reports and gives us information. So I can run that, and then we can show you, hey, here's some things, make some recommendations, and it goes on what we call our roadmap. Whoops, don't go forward. The baseline technical alignment, that is for organizations that have at least 10 computers, mostly because that's labor intensive. You can hire me to do it, but I just can't do it for free. I don't get my money back on a 1 or 2 user organization. But that's kind of what we do in our security offering is we have our own internal standards that we develop through my podcast, through conversations like this or everything else. I'm constantly evolving it. And then I go and I align my clients to those standards and give a report of where you're out of alignment. Security awareness training, that is something I can give you for free. Policies and procedures, templates. Again, not a big deal if you don't have employees, but if you do, acceptable use policies, bring your own device policies, incident response plans, that sort of thing. I can give you templates for that. Checklists, yes, of how to put all this into place. Roadmap comes from that assessment that I talked about, which just is basically, these are the things you need to do. Let's figure out when you're going to do them and how you're going to do them. Buy them from me, I don't care. Go get them from somebody else, but let's not make the Elko Daily Free Press news headline. implementation classes, that's kind of a webinar thing that I do that you're welcome to join. And then a 1 hour free consultation, that's an annual thing that I'll do for anybody. So that, if I were to sell all that separately, and I keep saying, like Billy, like you remembered everything I said last time, but I changed it a little bit. I actually added a couple things and I did raise the price because this stuff is, my point here is, like, I'm not trying to be a late night infomercial, but I am telling you that if I had to build this stuff and sell it, there's a cost to it. It's a huge cost on my time. Being here, you guys aren't paying for it. I'm not getting paid, but I'm here. I do it because I'm passionate about it, because I love it, because I care about people and business and everything else. But there is a real cost to what I'm doing. And it is, that's math. That's not just an emotional number. We'll custom tailor these. I don't just give like one. That's why I don't just come here and hand out the checklists and the roadmaps, because everybody's different. It's available to everybody. The only fine print is that technical alignment I do for slightly larger organizations. If you want it, that's how you get it. It'll just be a 10-minute web meeting, and that's so that I can understand what you're looking for, so I don't give you a bunch of stuff you don't want or need. I'm going to ask some questions. I'll answer any questions that you have. I say it's 10 minutes. I'll stay on longer. I just don't like to take people's time. Anyways, just find out if we're a good fit, if what we do will benefit you or not, whether that's the free resources or some paid version of what we do. My only ask is that if you take our free stuff, just recommend us to somebody. Tell a friend, even if it's just somebody else that wants the free stuff. And that's how you get it. Go to mastercomputing.com/discovery. I am still using the old website for a little while longer. It'll soon be Phoenix IT advisors.com/discovery. But if you go to if you put the discovery at the end of the other website right now, it doesn't work. The website does, but not the link at the end. All right, did I get you out of here by one? Oh, I missed it by 5 minutes. Any final thoughts, questions, jokes?
Were you aware of the breach that happened with the state of Nevada and unemployment insurance?
I read the headline. I didn't dig into it yet. Yeah.
Somebody was collecting unemployment insurance under my name for almost a
Oh,
year.
your name?
Under my name.
I didn't hear about that.
Through the state.
I didn't hear about that.
Under everybody's name during COVID.
Oh, okay.
It was a massive amount of money that
Okay.
was paid out. And I got a statement
Oh,
how
wow.
much I had drawn on my unemployment, and I was working.
Okay, well, I'm guessing it's the same. Like I said, I read a headline, but I didn't dig into that one. Yikes.
Yeah, it didn't hit me, but I was afraid it was going to hit me on the taxes.
Right, yeah.
That I was claiming money that I didn't get.
Right. That would be my concern as well. Fun stuff. They're out there.
Are companies like being like LifeLock,
Mhm.
are they worthwhile?
It's not a bad thing. Funny thing about LifeLock. Do you remember the commercials where the guy was driving vans around with his Social Security on the side? The number of times he was successfully breached is disturbing. So but it was still a gimmick that worked for him, you know. Anyways, do they work? Not as well as the owner likes to say, because you don't hear about that. But it's not a bad idea to have credit monitoring, and there's several of them. My ex-wife was had her identity stolen to some extent. We just started getting messages that your new credit card is active. What? And a lot of times you think that's a phishing email, right? So I'm like, oh, this is nonsense, and you ignore it. But it was legit, and somebody had actually changed her address with the post office to, I think, down to Houston, if I remember right. So we lived in Dallas, and opened bank account or a credit card account in her name. So we put her on. It wasn't LifeLock, but on a credit monitoring service, and it has been. You know, you can prevent people from doing that, anyways. So the thing about this is the way to approach it is through layers. So there's not one single thing that's going to fix everything, but you do want to stack. You know, it's like a bucket with a bunch of holes in it, and we are constantly just trying to plug those holes. And unfortunately, as soon as we get them all plugged, another one springs, and you go after that. That's my life. That's what I get to do for a living. Any other questions? All right, I'll let you guys get back to your day. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. We appreciate you coming and all of your knowledge. And I wish more people would have been here to learn, but you have your information at the remember.
And it's recorded.
That's available, and if people can watch the video.
Yeah. I actually do webinars with the same subject, so I've got one going next Tuesday. Maybe we could advertise that to the members as well. And yeah. Well, oh, you can't see that on camera, probably. Huh? I've got my QR code up there. For the webinar, you mean? You just go to the website, mastercomputing.com or phoenixitadvisors.com. Both addresses work. And then under resources, there's a link to our live webinars. We do them every month. So this is a presentation that it's a message I'm passionate about, and I continue to just harp on it, hoping I keep somebody from getting hit, because God, it's ugly when it happens.